Hello and a very warm welcome to the Crone Zone. I'm Lynn and I read the signs and symbols in both astrology and tarot, often combining the two, as I shall a little bit today in this video for our new moon in Gemini, which is coming up here in the UK on the 27th of May. There is a real lift in the energy at the moment, and we really do seem under starters orders for a brand new start, for something quite new that is coming in. To begin with, we have planets in mainly two signs, and those are Aries and Gemini. And Aries, as we know, starts off the zodiac. So this speaks to us of very new beginnings. And the planets in Gemini, similarly, a lot of energy around communications, around ideas, around plans, around beginning things, about communication. And of course, these are a fire sign, Aries, and an air sign, Gemini. And we are just about to have all of our outer planets moving into fire and air, having been for some time in earth and water. And this is going to see a real sea change in things, a real change of direction and energy. Now, I know that we are in the fifth month of the year and quite some way towards the end of the fifth month of the year. But I would say that this new moon is the best planning moon this year. It is the best moon for thinking about our hopes, our dreams, laying our plans, making our choices. So personally, you may be feeling a real influx of energy into those areas of life which Gemini rules, such as communication, short distance travel, learning, speaking, writing. All of those things may be coming up to the fore. So the winds of change are definitely blowing, and they are coming in very much as a revitalizing breath of fresh air and a great opportunity for us collectively and individually to make the most of the planning, dreaming and seeding opportunities of this new moon. It's a very unusual occurrence for all of the outer planets to be changing sign. And even more unusual and very comforting is the fact that they all seem to be making positive aspects to each other. So we get the sense of change coming in, which is really being guided, being overseen, if you like, by these transits of these outer planets. So let's talk about some of these planets changing signs and how that's looking for us. On the 23rd of May, so shortly before our new moon in Gemini, Saturn moved into 0 degrees of Aries, where it very quickly made a conjunction, came together with the planet Neptune. Now this is significant because we're right at the very start of the zodiac, so we're talking real beginnings here. And Neptune and Saturn together, whilst they may seem very different energies, together they can consolidate dreams. Similarly, Neptune can dissolve some of the boundaries that Saturn has traditionally put in place and which seemingly are insoluble, but are not. So it's a harbinger, if you like, of some things being swept away, by the waters of Neptune, but also Neptune and Saturn coming together, Saturn making real the dreams of Neptune, our North Node ruler. So as we know, the North Node remains at this moment in Pisces. Now, Saturn is also all about timings and the right time, a time for every purpose under heaven. This is very much Saturn's realm. Now, of course, whole concepts of time may be changing at the moment, but it still behooves us very much, especially when we are thinking of our own plans, dreams, possibilities, the seeds we wish to plant, to think about timing. And Saturn really can be most helpful there. So that's something very positive to hold on to. Now, as Saturn moves through Aries, it may also have the effect of restricting some of those Aryan qualities that we're seeing at play in the world. One of which is aggression and warfare. So, let's pray that the influence of Saturn in Aries may actually move some way to creating some peace in our world, and maybe the possibility of some lasting peace treaties. Of course, this may not be happening overnight, but let's observe how this plays out during Saturn's transit of Aries. Now, another aspect of Aries, of course, is competition. And this can be interpersonal competition with others, but of course also competition between nations seeing each other as rivals. And I hope that in some ways that is another thing which is tempered somewhat by Saturn's transit through Aries. And I want to return to that in just a moment, because there's another Aryan body that I want to discuss in connection with that, and that's Eris. We'll get to that in due course. So let me bring in the first of the just 3 tarot cards that I drew for this reading, asking for additional insight and guidance on it. And the first card that I drew was this one, which is the Ace of Pentacles. And I think this is perfect because it is a card of new opportunity in a concrete way. And I think that that's quite Saturnian, this idea of some manifesting change, producing something in the world that can be of benefit. So this is a potential card for that to happen. But also I'm interested in, if I can get my, there we are, working backwards here, it's always hard for me, this archway here. In many ways, Saturn is a gatekeeper. Saturn gatekeeps, and I think this is our if I can get it, archway into a new future that Saturn is gatekeeping in some sense for us. And there are some other helpful aspects that Saturn's making that I think play into this same theme. Saturn is in Aries until the 1st of September. It will then retrograde back into Pisces, but return on a more permanent footing to Aries in February of 2026. And I think what we're getting is a preview. It's like the film trailer for things that are really going to go forward in 2026. And I think that 2026 and beyond is really the time that we can be planning for and seeding in our own lives and in our world now. But whilst Saturn is on its travels, it's going to keep forming helpful aspects to Uranus. This is so important. Uranus brings in shocks, surprises, change, sudden enlightenment, sudden realizations, but it can be a lightning strike energy. The influence of Saturn in good harmony with Uranus can again be to temper that, to slow that down, to do those things that Saturn does well, which is to build for the next 3 generations, to be thinking, is this durable? Is this practical? Does this work? So I think that Saturnian energy working with Uranus, and it forms how, it's never far out of orb, but it's 3 times it makes exact, very helpful aspects to Uranus. And I think that's really going to help with the future building of what's coming in as well. So now I'd like to return to Eris. Eris is in Aries currently, and she is conjunct, so right next to Chiron, which we know is our healing journey, those things that we have been looking at repeatedly, it seems now, those triggers that have been pressed in us, those wounds that we have all been feeling and hopefully going some way towards healing. Now, Eris can be something of a troublemaker. She is a sister of Mars, who rules Aries, and is known to delight in causing chaos. I want to go back to that theme of competition. Eris was excluded from the party and came and threw a golden ball in amongst 3 goddesses and said, "Oh, this is for the fairest." The goddesses instantly went into competition mode, and in the end Paris was asked to judge the fairest, and he chose Venus because she promised him the love of the most beautiful woman in the world, who happened to be Helen of Troy, and the Trojan War started, and much of this down to the competitive divide and rule. Put people into competition, you divide them, and then you rule them. And one of the functions of Eris is to show us what's not working. And certainly that competitive element, both in our wider world, but also in our personal lives, is an area here we're being asked to heal. Because it is the ego which compares and competes. The self doesn't, because why on earth would it? It knows itself to be a unique part of the jigsaw puzzle. It cannot compete because it's uniquely what it is. But the ego is driven always into competition. And using division and competition is very much a strategy that's been used in our society since times of yore. And I do think it's one that we need to be savvy to and aware of, and not fall into the pitfall of. And I think we're being asked to look at that with this new moon, especially because both Eris and Chiron are quite close. They're within orb of conjunction. They're 5 degrees away from Venus in Aries. And Venus in Aries, she's met with Saturn. She's really sort of gone through the middle a little bit. And she now is standing for self-worth, your own inner worthiness. And it is your claiming of that, our claiming of that, which will help with the wounds of Chiron and dispel this curse of competition that we suffer under. It's like at the moment we're getting a trailer for the film, the movie, which will begin in February 2026 and really race ahead. Now, at the moment, Uranus is going to be changing sign in July. I think it's July the 7th, when it will move from Taurus into Gemini and remain there until November the 7th, when it too will retrograde back into Pisces. But again, return on a more permanent footing to Gemini in February of 2026. So it is like we're getting a preview, you know, or a taster of things that are coming up. And I think this is why this is such an amazing time of opportunity. So let's look now at the sign of Gemini, where after all our moon is. And we have Mercury, Hygeia, the Sun, and the Moon all clustered together in Gemini. Now, Jupiter's also still there, just getting towards the very end of Gemini and getting ready to go into Cancer. Yet another body that's changing sign. But let's focus on those planets that are in Gemini. Well, Mercury is there. And Mercury is exactly conjunct Hygeia, which is about health and healing, which takes me back to the Chiron Eris theme I was just discussing. But Mercury, it's out of sign with Uranus, but because Uranus is right at the end of Taurus and Mercury quite close to the start of Gemini, the two are talking to each other. And that's important because we have the daily mind, Mercury, the facts, the information, the gathering of information, of which we're probably going to be doing a lot at this period, in line with the higher mind, Uranus, the bringer of changes, the future, universal mind, if you like. So again, I think our daily thinking, planning, hoping, aspiring here can be tapping into those longer term futuristic themes, and be doing so thinking about the need to heal, to refresh, to cleanse. I think one of the words of Hygeia is cleansing, and that's feels like a good energy here. So now, as we come to our Sun and Moon, both together in Gemini, I would like to show you the second card that I drew, the second of the three. And it is this card. And this is the Lovers. And it is the card in the tarot ruled by Gemini. And I love the way these two systems are talking to each other here. My shuffle, I shuffled and these were random pulls. What are the chances of getting the card which symbolises Gemini coming out of the deck? Well, pretty high it seems today. So the Lovers symbolise Castor and Pollux, the twins, but also in the tarot they are this choice points. They are about choices. They're about which road do I take? Which is the way for me to go? This one or that one? Because of course Gemini is binary, it's always two. So we're often being offered at least two options. Can be more, of course. And so I've said this is a time of planning, of hoping, of dreaming, of plotting, if you like, of gathering information and making choices, very much indicated by this card. And of course, what we're asked to do is to make those choices which are heartfelt, those choices which are for our greater good, those choices which the angel is overseeing there. So I think this is, again, a very positive message about the opportunity of this time. about what it can offer us. And the fact that, since we are seeding ideas into the future, thinking of 2026, we have time to consider, we have time to think, we have time to gather all the facts and use the mental energy of Gemini, but informed by a higher morality. I think that is the message here. And while we're talking about the lovers, I would like to point out that Venus and Mars are trining each other. They are working together in very helpful aspect, with Mars still being conjunct Karma, asteroid Karma. And so I do feel as well that at this point of the moon, there is something of a more harmonious balance present between the yin and the yang. And that can only be a good thing. There's hardly any earth in this chart of the new moon. It's, as I've said, it's all fire and air. So fast moving, inspiring, quick thinking, sense of wonder, sense of curiosity will be very, very high. But it doesn't seem that now is the time to manifest. Now is the time to plan. Now is the time to dream in. Now is the time to think. Now is the time to seed and orchestrate and choose. That's what this time is about. I'd like to show you now the last of the cards which I drew, and it was this one, which is the Knight of Cups, very much associated with, let me get this right, the Holy Grail, the Grail Knight, that cup of precious spirit there of love which is being carried. I think this is our journey of the North Node in Pisces, guiding us into the future, taking the route of love, of the spirit. And it may be rather a long, winding route, but definitely that is the route into the future that we are invited to travel. It brings me great pleasure to talk about this moon and its hopes and possibilities. That feels very good to me after, some of the pretty tough forecasts that we have gone through. I hope that you really enjoy this Gemini moon, that you're getting out and about, that you're meeting and talking and communicating, and that your sense of curiosity is high, and that you, as I am, are feeling renewed sense of hope. So I'll leave you with that thought and see you again next time. So bye for now.